What we have just watched was the opening sequence of Vale Tudo, a primetime soap opera broadcast by Rede Globo. The song is performed by Gal Costa, one of the most iconic singers we had in Brazil. The images reflect the plurality, diversity, and contradictions of a country that was invaded by Portuguese in 1500 and had its land exploited for centuries under the logic of extractivism and slavery. Over 4 million Africans were forcibly brought there. Until 1808, it was forbidden to print books in Brazil, which delayed the emergence of a literate and graphic culture. Even so, local visual expressions and techniques flourished, often ignored by official history. Independence in 1822 and the late abolition of slavery in 1888 did not dismantle colonial structures. We remain a deeply unequal country. Throughout the 20th century, in the middle of industrialization, urbanization, and dictatorship, Brazil asserted itself with a mixed cultural strength, with mixture as a form of resistance. A country that finds to preserve its democracy and reveals itself as magical and fascinating in its contradictions. Good afternoon, my name is Gustavo Greco. I'm the founder and creative director of Greco, an independent studio based in Belo Horizonte. We were recently ranked by the IF Design Award as the second most awarded design firm in South America. I was part of the jury for the Top Award, and I'd like to thank Fedrigoni for the invitation to share a bit with you about Brazilian design. Brazil is a country that defies synthesis. When it comes to Brazil, contrasts are everywhere, two or more facets of a single nation. Take a look. Brazil has 212 million inhabitants. The richest 10% in Brazil hold nearly 59% of the country's total income. Poverty is declining, but it still affects more than half the population. 1 in 4 Brazilians lives on up to approximately 100 euros per month. The São Paulo LGBTQIA+ Pride Parade was recognized in 2022 as the largest event of its kind in the world. Yet, Brazil remains the country with the highest number of murdered LGBT individuals. 57% of the Brazilian population does not identify as white, more than 120 million people. Still, Black individuals are 2.6 times more likely to be murdered in Brazil. While the overall homicide rate dropped in the last 10 years, murder of indigenous people have increased by 21.6%. There is a huge curiosity fact, even for me. There are 270 indigenous languages spoken in my country, and I know none of them. Brazil has 26 states. Only the states of São Paulo, Minas Gerais, and Rio de Janeiro concentrate 38% of Brazil's population. Yet, over 50% of Brazilian towns have fewer than 20,000 inhabitants. And only Brazil has cachaça, pão de queijo, and the most famous lotion specifically for the butt. We are known from carnival and music, but we are also one of the largest creative economies in the world. And yes, we have world-class design production. This is the question that brought me here. Does it make sense to try to define a country's design? Following the logic of opposites we have already discussed, on one hand, it helps build cultural identity. A definition can enhance the perception of a national design, highlighting unique cultural, historical, and social traits, as you can see with Scandinavian design, Japanese design, or Swiss style. Makes it easier for audience, clients, and institutions to define and value local production. Plays a role in political affirmation. In post-colonial contexts, defining a national design can be an act of resistance and cultural reappropriation. On the other hand, we have the risk of reducing what is multiple. Brazil is continental, diverse, and unequal. Any attempt to define may exclude everything that doesn't fit the definition. Brazilian design can be flattened into cliches like tropical colors, samba, or an elite aesthetic. Erases dissenting voices. To define is in part to select. That can reinforce exclusive canons and make marginalized perspectives invisible. Design is a global and hybrid practice. Contemporary design moves between countries, cultures, and platforms. It's increasingly mixed, transnational, and collaborative. Silence new languages. Trying to crystallize what Brazilian design is may lead to repetition and formula instead of opening space for the new. Graphic design was established as a formal discipline in Brazil with the founding of the Instituto de Arte Contemporânea in 1951 and the Escola Superior de Desenho Industrial in 1963. However, in his book Brazilian Design Before Design, Rafael Cardoso offers a historical and critical analysis of practices and visual manifestations that preceded the industrialization of design in the country. Cardoso shows how design existed well before it was defined as an academic field or professional practice. It was already present in the country's culture, artisanal, and industrial production. He investigates the influence of indigenous, African, and European traditions in shaping Brazil's visual identity and how these expressions were key to forming what we now call modern Brazilian design. Starting from the idea that Brazilian design does not begin with industrialization or formal education, but with ancestral design practices, the Black Brazilian design collective Preta DG created the project Negras Memórias, Black Memories. This project seeks to honor and value the work of Black professionals who have shaped and continue to shape the history of design in Brazil. By gathering notable names from the creative field and related areas, the project challenges the historical erasures of these figures and offers Afro-Brazilian references to students, professionals, and the general public. The tribute ranges from enslaved Africans who create utilitarian objects in daily life to contemporary designers passing through the Black press, activist movements, and expressions of African-based religions. The result of this essential research were presented for the first time at the Brazilian Design Biennial, ADG Brasil, held in December of the last year in Aracaju, a city in the northeastern of Brazil. Since its first edition in 1992, the Brazilian Design Biennial by ADG Brasil has evolved into the main showcase for national design, bringing together projects from every region of the country. Today, it serves as a real indicator measuring both the market in terms of economic, investment in design, and cultural development of new visual languages. I had the honor of curating the previous edition in 2019 and was part of the coordination group for this one as well. This edition's curatorship was led by the award-winning designer Samia Jacinto. A jury made up of 224 professionals reviewed over 1,600 submitted projects from nearly every Brazilian state and selected 791 for the catalog. From this, Samia chose 110 outstanding projects that were featured in the exhibition. What I've done here was to select 19 of them so we can highlight together some aspects of Brazilian design production. These projects reflect what I have already said: contradictions, cultural legacies, and the plurality of a country with continental scale. Projects that give visibility to the cultural production of Black people in Brazil, such as Black Cinema Circle by Lucas d'Assunção and Larissa Ramos, a showcase celebrating both classic and contemporary Black filmmakers and honoring the memory and legacy of the Black movement. The visual identity and catalog use risography and treat old photographic and cinematic archives, resulting in a nostalgic and dynamic publication filled with texture. Caringana, by Will Nunes, an exhibition highlighting the work of Black illustrators in contemporary Brazilian children's literature. The graphic concept evokes the cultural and visual richness of Adinkra symbols, ideograms used by Akram-speaking people whose meanings are filled with ancestral knowledge and values. Projects that carry pride. Visual Identity Brazilian Lesbian Archive by Thais Esmeraldo. For a civil organization dedicated to preserving historical and cultural records about Brazilian lesbian identities, the typography reinforces a commitment to representation. Elements of the Brazilian flag were deconstructed and combined with the triangle, a historical lesbian feminist symbol using neon shades of yellow and green to highlight visibility. MTV Pride Bumper by Yum Yoneda, a reinterpretation of MTV's iconic bumpers. The project narrates the experience of a gay man through a magical lens while still acknowledging the emotional hardships of feeling different. Our carnivals. Yes, we have many kinds. Carnaval Pitu by Hannah Luisa. To celebrate the 2024 Carnival, a famous alcoholic beverage from the state of Pernambuco released an illustrated can paying tribute to Brazilian street carnival, with emphasis on Recife and Olinda, and honoring the renowned local artista Bajado. Rio Carnival by Tatio and Plau. For one of the world's biggest and most authentic Rio events, a brand was created that brings together collective strength, contagious energy, and the ability to turn the ordinary into extraordinary. The visual identity is inspired by the evolution of the porta-bandeira, flag bearer. Her fluid, rhythmic movement were captured by motion sensor in an experiment conducted on the avenue itself. This gesture brought her soul, the soul of samba schools, into the visual expression. Like a brush stroke, the flag drew the typeface under the premise that the brand, like the entire celebration, had to samba. Carnivals of Brazil by Felipe Honda and Perec Silva. For a television network looking to express the cultural diversity, Brazilian greatest popular celebration, this illustration project was developed to reflect the regionalism of each state. Each year, it highlights a different theme, from street blocks to trios elétricos, from neighborhood parties to samba parades, using the richness of the festival as the core of its visual languages. Typography filled with Brazilian flair. Seiva, by Fábio Hagi Type Design. An independent typeface rooted in the high-contrast modern style. As the letters grow, their expressiveness blossoms, with fine, delicate strokes contrasting against bold, organic shapes full of life, including exotic alternate characters. Juma Color Font by Sila Costa Studio, a Latin America font bursting with the life and rhythm, made to be used in oversized formats. The letter forms recall the beauty of tropical birds, and the vibrant color palettes blurs the boundaries between typography and illustration. Letraço by Bernardo Sec. To explore the relationship between letter forms and graffiti, a full alphabet was hand-painted on roll-up steel doors throughout my hometown, Belo Horizonte. Brazil has 6 different biomes, and they are present in our products and their packagings. Territórios Eve by Estúdio Bogotá, for a line of Brazilian artisanal created using the essence of the country's 6 biomes, Atlantic Forest, Cerrado, Caatinga, Pampas, Amazon, and Pantanal. The map of Brazil was reimagined using brush strokes and color palettes, inspired by each landscape printed on bottles with a ceramic-like finish. Natura Naturé by Faro's Bright Design. Designed to spark children's imagination, the packaging introduces characters made from natural elements such as leaves and stones, turning them into ambassadors of the brand's concept and inviting outdoor play. Jetiboca Café by Oficina Paraíso. Café from the Zona da Mata region in Minas Gerais, packaged in nostalgic brown paper bags with typographic labels and small wooden crates inspired by traditional market boxes. A Brazil with many stories documented through a prolific editorial production. Textos Putos by Coletivo. For a book that tackles a still taboo topic, sex, erotic short stories are followed by text and images, including pornographic photos and bold illustrations, as described by the author herself. Seu Emanuel by Dandara Almeida and Bruno Biano, a book to celebrate Manuka Almeida, a composer, poet, and actor from Sergipe, written by hand and completed posthumously by his wife. The format is a poetic diary that tells the story of his final months with delicacy and optimism. SESC Workshops by Teresa Bertinardi. To promote the programming of courses and workshops at the Cultural Center, 6 bi-monthly booklets were printed. Each month was represented through a modular visual interpretation of its number, and by flipping the cover flap, a new image was revealed. Renew interest in the units program. All the books by Machado de Assis, by Daniel Trent. Graphic project for the complete 26-volume collection of works by Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis. The visual identity draws on historical edition as a typographic tribute to the author. Our studio, Greco, had two standout projects featured in this edition of the biennial. The first was the visual identity for a marketplace built in the 60s.
There's a place in Belo Horizonte called the Mercado Novo, founded in the 1960s as a complement to the city's main commercial area. Initially underutilized and filled with print shops and workshops, it was revitalized in 2018. The Cobogos, Brazilian hollow and ornate brick walls that make up the grid-like facade of this large modernist block are key elements of the location's identity. Through their projected shadows, the Cobogos testify to the passing of the day, creating shapes throughout the Mercado Novo, which is open 24 hours, and marking the division of time. This daily rhythm inspired a dynamic brand system. Each floor has its own brand and color palette based on its peak hours, making Mercado Novo an all-hours destination. The facade's grid also influenced the design system, incorporating variable typography to create compositions that reflect the market's diversity and versatility. Here, the motto is, if there's space, it must be filled. The challenge was to create a brand for this space that represents so many things all at once. The solution needed to reflect this diversity and authenticity, celebrating urban life and connecting people, spaces, and services. In Brazilian Sign Language, the sign for Mercado Novo uses the two hands in a crossed fingers position, representing Cobogo's facade. Today, Mercado Novo is a cultural landmark, a vibrant hub for cuisine and handicrafts, showcasing a creative spirit while honoring its traditional roots. For every visitor, a unique path unfolds, for any time of day or night.
The biennial highlighted also another project created by Greco, the visual identity for the Brumadinho Memorial. On January 25th, 2019, a huge dam disaster happened when a tailing dam containing waste from an iron ore mine 5.6 miles east of the city of Brumadinho collapsed. This unleashed a flow of mud devastating the mine's offices, including a canteen staff as well as its surroundings, destroying houses in the village and killing 272 people. The families of victims have created an association named Avabrum, whose purpose is to seek for the rights and interests of those who suffered from the loss of their loved ones. The company responsible for the dam, Vale, came to an agreement with the state and was required to pay a series of indemnities, fines, and compensations to repair socioeconomic and environmental damages. One of the compensations was the creation of the Memorial Brumadinho, created by the architect Gustavo Pena to honor those who lost their lives in the tragedy. The typeface was designed by Black Letra. Oh, sorry.
There's a place...
Sorry.
On January 25, 2019, in the city of Brumadinho, Minas Gerais, a tailings dam containing iron ore residual waste collapsed. This resulted in a devastating mudslide that destroyed everything in its path and killed 272 people. The families of the victims created an association called Avabrum, whose objective is to seek justice for those who suffered the loss of their loved ones. Val SR, the company responsible, has been ordered to pay a series of indemnifications for the crime. One of these is for the creation of a memorial in honor of the victims, resistant to erasure over time and history. Mixed into the original grove where the memorial was built, 272 yellow ipe trees were planted, trees that bloom when drought is severe and demonstrate to us that, despite everything, life still goes on. Moulded out of metal and illuminated, repeating ipe flowers line a 230-metre path towards the point of original rupture, one flower for each victim. They illuminate as a kind of procession that bears witness to what happened in an inerasable way. Made of corten steel, the signage equipment mimics the shapes, views and angles of the architectural design project and highlights the path in a practically silent manner. Memory, testimony, silence. An exclusive typography, inspired by types carved in stone, common in memorial spaces, was created. The Brumadinho typography has serif, sans serif and alma versions. Architecture, design and typography in a project that confronts the individual and puts them face to face with the undeniable record of reality, a space for reflection, homage and preservation of collective memory. May such a tragedy never happen again.
Because design also has the power to show which side you stand on. Thank you.